Hello, welcome back. My name is Catherine, and today I'm doing a tour of my mini bookshelf. So this isn't the extent of my book collection, so I'm actually very lucky. I do have like several hundred books. I'm very privileged, but I currently live in like a student house just like to finish up my degree, and the rest of my books are at my parents' basement in storage. So over here is just kind of like my TBR of when I moved out, or like when they moved away and I just brought whatever books I had left to read, and then just like books I've acquired while living here. Yeah, it's not the extent to my collection, but I still have quite a few books here, so I thought I would show you all today. Okay, to begin up top up here, this is the top shelf of the bookshelf and also like my nightstand. So I've got my lamp, a candle, and a couple little rock creatures. It's a frog and hummingbird, and this lovely coaster that I use. So up here I keep my reading journal, which is just like the Michaels dotted notebooks, and then my current physical TBR. So right now I'm still reading Count of Monte Cristo, and I'm also reading Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. So this is like an Islamic inspired pirate fantasy, which is really good so far. Over here I have my lovely essential oil diffuser. I have a little soy candle. I have this, I don't know where it's from or what it's from or anything about it, to be honest, but it was $1, so I was like, give me the brass barrel for $1. Underneath those, I am a vintage book collector, amateur vintage book collector, but this is the newest addition to my collection. Most of my vintage books are in storage at the moment, but I attained this very cute mini copy of Spectator, which is just a collection of essays, comedies, and whatnot. I can't remember off the top of my head when this was published, but this is just a fun little book, a little addition to my collection. I've read a couple of the essays in here. I don't know, what can I say? Underneath the diffuser, I have a copy of Mansfield Park by Jane Austen, which I have read. I have this beautiful hardcover copy that I thrifted, and I have a copy of The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova, which I've also read. And I want to reread it this year. This book holds a very special place in my heart because this is the book that actually inspired me to properly study history in university. So I keep that up here too. Moving on to the kind of top shelf, I have fiction over here, and then it kind of turns to nonfiction. I very recently organized my bookshelf, and this is the last it's gonna look like this because I'm moving away. But anyways, so right here I just have my essential oils that I put in my diffuser, and then this is I keep my bookmarks in here. Starting with my nonfiction, I have quite a growing collection of nonfiction. I didn't really start reading it until a couple years ago, but I've grown to really love it. And I do thrift. I think just about all of these are thrifted. If you're looking to getting into nonfiction, thrifting and secondhand is probably the best you can find. My best advice is just do a little bit of research on the authors, because there are some phonies out there. So to begin, I have Andrew Wheatcroft's The Habsburgs, which I read for a class, and it's an enjoyable book. It's a great introduction to the family and the dynasty. Next, I have The Gothic Image by Émile Malle, which is religious art in France of the 13th century. I haven't read this one yet, but there's a collection of very beautiful illustrations throughout the book, and I'm very excited to get to this. Next, I have Ladies in Waiting by Anne Somerset, which is just a history of ladies in waiting in the English court from the Tudors to the present day. This was a gift from my mum, and I'm looking forward to this as well. I have Women of the Cousins' War by Philippa Gregory. I mentioned this in my last video as one of probably the best nonfictions I've read this year, but this was quite enjoyable. It's a great introduction to the period of England, like the War of Roses period in England, and a little bit of insight right before Henry VIII and his England. Next, I have Women's History of the Christian Church by Elizabeth Muir. I read this also for class this year, but this was a phenomenal book, very insightful to the role of women throughout history in the Christian church, and I learned a lot in general. It was really good. Next, I don't really know why this is here. I have The Artist's Way, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity. It's kind of funny. 2 years ago, I begged for this book for Christmas. I haven't read it yet, but I wanted to hold out till the end of my degree because there's a lot of like kind of activities and things that I wanted to do, like from the book, that, you know, I can't do while I'm grinding. So next, I have The Embarrassment of Riches by Simon Scamma, which is a history of Dutch culture in the Golden Age. This, it's technically like a school textbook, but I bought it at a university book sale. And yeah, this is also full of illustrations and whatnot. So this is kind of like a kind of thing I'd read like in the depths of winter when I'm not doing anything or going anywhere. Last in this side stack, I have The Life and Times, The Life and Times of Chaucer by John Gardner. Now this was entirely a cover by, because hello. But this is, yeah, basically like a biographical history of Geoffrey Chaucer, who wrote the Canterbury Tales, and this was a very enjoyable book. I quite liked this. Continuing on with the nonfiction, I have Plagues and People by William McNeill, which I mentioned in my last video. It's basically a history of pandemics and epidemics and how it has changed humankind. And then lastly for nonfiction up here, I have Daily Life in the Middle Ages. My favorite history is like public history and commoner history, so this is the kind of thing I'd be really into. And I mean, beautiful cover, beautiful spine, what can I say? Beside it, I have the Daughter of the Moon Goddess duology. I think it's called the Celestial Kingdoms duology. These books were good. I really enjoyed these. Like the setting is very beautiful. The plot I thought was really good. The writing, phenomenal. If you like, I wouldn't say it was a romantasy, but for a fantasy with like a very romance heavy plot, I thoroughly enjoyed these books. I need a sip of tea. Next up, I have Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. This book was fine. I just think people need to seek therapy. Next, I have, this is my favorite edition that I have of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I've read this book, like not this specific edition, but I've read this book like 3 times, and I'm gonna read it a 4th. It is such a phenomenal book. It's my favorite classic, one of my favorite classics. And I decided to bring this gorgeous gothic edition with me when I moved. Next, I have Time as a Mother by Ocean Vuong. I'm an amateur at reading poetry. Right now I'm reading one of Ocean Vuong's other books, Night Sky with Exit Wounds. But this was enjoyable. I found this at the thrift, which is really cool. After that, I have Garden Spells by Sarah Addison Allen. This was okay. I expected more out of this and was kind of disappointed, but it is what it is. Following along, I have Song of the Huntress by Lucy Holland. This was good. If you want a fantasy book, a sapphic fantasy book that's set in like pre-Anglo-Saxon England, this is the book for you. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Following along, I have In the Shadow of the Banyan, which I talked about in my last video. This was a very gripping and devastating read. After that, I have The Queen's Fool by Philippa Gregory. As I mentioned in my last video, I read another one of Philippa Gregory's fictions and didn't like it, but she has so many, so I thought I'd just give it another try and read from a slightly later time period. Finally, at the end of the shelf, I have How to Write an Autobiographical Novel by Alexander Chi. This is just a collection of essays about writing and the self. This was a gift from one of my friends for Christmas. And I have Van Gogh by Timothy de Fombelle, which is a translated from French fiction. I'm not entirely sure what this is about, but this was also a gift. And I'm looking forward to it. It sounds very good. Moving to the shelf below it. To start on this side, I have Herobrine's War by Mark Cheverton. This was a gag gift from the same friend who got me these 2 books. And yes, I will no, I've not read any of the other books in the series, but yes, I will be reading and reviewing Herobrine's War. Next up, I have The Dubious Hills, which I talked about briefly in my last video. This was fine. Following, I have this copy of The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is also a thrifted book. Most of my books are thrifted because I'm also cheap. But it was very hard to find a thrifted copy, and I quite like this one because some kid wrote, "I hate this dumb book," in the beginning of this. So this is definitely a prized edition. Following, I have the Lord of the Rings illustrated edition trilogy. These were very hard to find, but I got lucky. I got very lucky, and I also stole these from my father. But yeah, they are the beautiful illustrated editions. Now, I'm an artist, so anything illustrated is immediately some of my favorites. Here's examples of some of the illustrations. Like, these are beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. So these are quite the prizes in my collection. All right, following up, I have my Kindle. Over here is like my spirituality book section. Most of these I'm not interested in reading. I just use for reference. So I have Living Lunarly, Everyday Meditation, Ancient Wisdom for Modern Living, Curative Magic, which I have read and enjoyed, Slavic Kitchen Alchemy, which I've also read and enjoyed, and Baba Yaga's Book of Witchcraft. I really enjoyed this book because it's also a great insight to pre-Christian Slavic culture and like traditional practices. So even if you're not someone who cares or believes in the spiritual, this is actually a great academic reference as well. Right, following this way, I have my classics collection. Now, in storage at my parents' house, this whole 3-tier shelf is actually used to house my classic collection. I own quite a few, and I do thoroughly enjoy reading classics. So in the shelf, I have Moll Flanders by Daniel Defoe. I talked about this in my last video. Gaslight, Gatekeep, Girl Boss is all I can say. Next, I have Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Now, this book is my Bible. I take this everywhere with me. I've read it multiple times over. I read passages out of this like people read passages out of the Bible. This book had such a large impact on me and my life and my mind, which sounds so kind of corny, but this was a thoroughly enjoyable book, and I recommend this to everybody. Following up, I have The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. This is a fun time. It's an enjoyable book. It's a great classic, and the stories are funny. Following up, I have Aurora Leigh and Other Poems by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. I read one of her poems for an English class I took a couple years ago, and Aurora Leigh was kind of advertised to me as a story about, you know, the struggles of being a woman author, which is in part what the story's about, but it has more to do with like the main character's romance, which is not a bad thing, just not what I expected when I went into it, but there's lots of beautiful passages. I've tabbed this very heavily. At the end of this shelf, I have 2 other books that I read for class, both that I read for the Habsburg class actually, but I have The Emperor's Tomb by Joseph Roth. Joseph Roth also wrote the Radetzky March, the book, not the musical piece, but this was quite interesting. And Prisoner of the Infidels by Osman Timishwara, which I talked about in my last video a little bit too. Alright, and moving on to the bottom, this is just kind of like my junk drawer. I just keep stuff in here. But over here is my tall hardback and 1 paperback collection. So I have Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. This was good. This was good. If you like stories about haunted houses, this was good. Next, I have A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faisal. Hafsa Faisal is one of my auto-buy authors. I read literally anything she writes because she kills it every single time. So, stan Hafsa Faisal. Following, I have The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. This is a kind of Norse mythology retelling. This was very good. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Next up, I have The Blood Trials by N.E. Davenport. I also thoroughly enjoyed this. I enjoy sci-fi to an extent, but I'm not the biggest sci-fi fan. But this, oh man, this was good. I really liked this book, and I'm so excited to get started on the second. Next, I have Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin, whatever. Yeah, self-explanatory. I love Game of Thrones too much. And then finally, I have The Jasad Air by Sarah Hashem. This is actually the Illumicrate exclusive that I got at the thrift store. So, slay for me. Yeah, this is kind of what I can gather from it, like maybe like Assyrian-inspired fantasy. I don't know. I've heard so many good things about it, and I've been wanting to read it for years, and so I'm very excited to have this copy too. Alright, and that is my mini bookshelf tour. Thank you for listening. Like I said, this is going to be the last that this looks so clean and put together because I am moving twice within the next 6 months. So this will no longer be here anymore. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. I hope maybe you got some book recommendations from this. I personally always look for book recs when I watch bookshelf tours. So I hope that you got a recommendation or two from this video, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.